When you look around and see the same routines, the same habits, the same thinking replicated over and over again, you start to notice something most people aren't living. They're complying. They're following a script that was handed to them a long time ago. And most of them never pause to ask where it came from or whether it fits who they truly are. And at the core of that script is a deeply embedded lie. One that's been fed to you so consistently, so subtly, that it's come to feel like truth. That lie is this: it's okay to be average. You weren't born thinking that way. You weren't born with limits or excuses. As a child, your instinct was to explore, to grow, to lead. You didn't ask for permission to dream. But slowly, through education systems built on uniformity, through media that glorifies distraction, and through cultures that reward conformity more than creativity, you were taught to shrink. You were taught to color inside the lines, to stay in your lane, to be realistic. And maybe the most damaging part of all this, you were praised when you stopped pushing. You were rewarded when you settled. Now, I'm not here to condemn structure or routine. Those are necessary. But I am here to challenge the belief that average is acceptable. Because the truth is, average is not a neutral place. It's a decision. It's a decision to accept conditions you didn't create. It's a decision to live in reaction instead of in intention. And it's a decision that most people make unconsciously every single day. Average says, I'll start tomorrow. Average says, that's good enough. Average waits for motivation. But greatness is built on momentum, not mood. The people who rise, who lead, who build and shift culture, they're not relying on the world to validate them. They create their own expectations and then exceed them. And that doesn't start with luck. It starts with identity. The question isn't what do you want? That's surface level. The question is, who do you believe you are? Because identity drives behavior. If you see yourself as someone who's just trying their best, you'll act like it. You'll make decisions from a place of survival, not vision. But when you start to see yourself as someone who is meant to lead, who is meant to build, who is meant to break the mold, your standards change. What once seemed good enough now feels insulting to your potential. And here's where the shift happens. Once you realize that average was never your destiny, you stop chasing permission and start building discipline. You stop comparing yourself to others and start comparing yourself to your own capacity. Because that's where real progress lies, not in outperforming others, but in outgrowing who you used to be. This isn't a motivational slogan. This is strategic. It's functional. It's about how you train your brain to associate meaning with discomfort and reward with effort. Because when you choose growth over ease, day after day, you literally reshape the neural networks that control your habits, your focus, your resilience. You become the kind of person whose actions align with their aspirations. Not once in a while, but consistently. And that consistency, that's what separates people who wish from people who lead. But you can't do that while holding on to average. You can't do that while defending mediocrity. And you definitely can't do that if your only goal is to be accepted, liked, or comfortable. There's a moment you'll come to, if you're paying attention, where you have to decide, do I want to keep blending in, or do I want to build something that actually reflects who I am? And don't confuse loudness with leadership. Some people talk like they're building empires, but act like they're scared to leave their comfort zone. This isn't about noise. It's about consistency. It's about doing the work when no one's watching. when no one's applauding, when it's inconvenient. That's where the real transformation happens. That's where the king in you is built, not by chance, but by choice. So if you feel that discomfort, that tension, that voice in the back of your head saying, there's more in me than what I'm showing right now, listen to it. That's not doubt. That's your potential waking up. When people talk about discipline, they often speak about it like it's a punishment, something rigid, something cold, something you impose on yourself to suffer through. That's a mistake. Discipline, in its most powerful form, is not about restriction, it's about alignment. It's the infrastructure that allows your potential to move from idea to reality. It's not something you add on later. It's the foundation everything is built on. Think about this through the lens of how your mind and body actually function. Your brain thrives on clarity, on pattern, on structure. It's not wired to constantly negotiate with chaos. If every day you wake up without a plan, if every decision you make is based on emotion or convenience, you exhaust your mental resources before the real work even begins. That's not a lack of talent. That's a lack of structure. And what creates that structure? Discipline. Discipline isn't about forcing outcomes. It's about creating the conditions for excellence to emerge. Every time you act with intention, every time you make a decision that prioritizes long-term gain over short-term pleasure, you're strengthening neural circuits in the brain. Those circuits govern focus, impulse control, emotional regulation, the very things that separate someone who simply has potential from someone who actually executes. There's a misconception that people who are highly disciplined are somehow naturally wired that way. But what I've seen time and time again is that discipline is not a genetic trait, it's a skill. And like any skill, it gets sharper the more you practice it. But to practice it, you need to understand it. You need to stop treating it like a chore and start treating it like a system. At its core, discipline is the ability to make a decision aligned with your values, especially when your emotions are pulling you in the opposite direction. It's easy to act with clarity when you feel motivated, but true discipline shows up when you're tired, when you're stressed, when no one's watching. That's when your standard reveals itself. That's when your identity is tested and shaped. And what people don't always realize is that this internal system is more powerful than any external tool or tactic. We live in a time of unlimited access, apps, resources, content, frameworks. But none of that matters if the core operating system is weak. You can't outsource discipline. You can't download it. You have to build it through repetition, through discomfort, through showing up again and again when quitting would be easier. There is something profoundly empowering about making a decision that's inconvenient in the short term, but completely aligned with the kind of person you want to become. Whether it's waking up earlier, putting in extra work, or saying no to something that distracts you, those moments are where power compounds. And over time, those decisions stop feeling like sacrifice. They start to feel like clarity. Because you know exactly why you're doing what you're doing. It's important to say this clearly. Discipline is not just about your goals. It's about your identity. It's about becoming the kind of person who does not tolerate misalignment between what they say they value and what they actually do. And once you've made that shift, you start to see everything differently. Your habits become non-negotiable. Your routines become rituals. Your time becomes sacred. And when people around you start asking how you stay so focused, how you keep showing up, how you keep executing, you won't point to motivation. you'll point to discipline. Because that's the difference. Motivation is inconsistent. Discipline is dependable. This is not a theoretical idea. This is how real transformation works. You build discipline into the very fabric of how you think, how you move, how you live. You let it shape your mornings, your choices, your conversations. And eventually, it stops being something you have to think about. It becomes who you are. And that's the goal. Not just to do disciplined things, but to become a disciplined person. Not rigid, not robotic, but sharp, clear, intentional, powerful. Because the truth is, every moment you choose discipline, you're not just rejecting average. You're building something greater than achievement. You're building credibility with yourself. And once you have that, you can do anything. Discipline is the architecture of freedom. We live in a world that constantly pushes us toward ease. Convenience is marketed as progress. Comfort is presented as success. But the truth is, what makes us stronger, mentally, physically, and emotionally, is rarely comfortable. In fact, the very thing that most people avoid is exactly what shapes them. Hardship, pressure, resistance. And if you want to rise beyond average, if you want to lead, to build, to create something meaningful and lasting, you have to train yourself to stop avoiding the hard things and start hunting them. There's a deep flaw in the mindset that tells us discomfort is something to escape. Because growth lives on the other side of that discomfort. Your brain doesn't adapt when things are easy. It doesn't rewire itself in calm, quiet, passive states. It changes in moments of intensity, of challenge, of deliberate strain. And the more you expose yourself to those conditions, the more capable you become, not just at enduring them, but at thriving in them. Average is built on a pattern of avoiding pain. It's built on shortcuts, excuses, rationalizations. But excellence is built on the opposite instinct. The one that says, I don't fear challenge, I pursue it. And that shift in orientation, from avoidance to pursuit, changes everything. Because you're no longer waiting for, at some point, you have to stop waiting. Waiting for the right moment, the perfect plan, the approval, the sign, the shortcut, whatever excuse has been keeping you still. Because here's the reality, no one is coming. No one is coming to save you, push you, or carry your ambition for you. If you don't lead yourself, you will be led by distractions, by comfort, by other people's expectations. And over time, you won't even notice it happening. You'll wake up one day and realize that your life was shaped more by indecision than by action. The truth is, leadership doesn't begin with a title. It doesn't begin when someone else recognizes your potential. It begins in the smallest of moments, when you choose discipline over delay, purpose over pleasure, vision over noise. And those moments, they happen every single day in how you manage your time, in how you hold your standards, in how you respond when no one's watching. That's where it starts. That's where it always starts. Because leadership is internal before it ever becomes external. It's built in silence, in solitude. In those quiet mornings when you could sleep in, but you don't. In those long hours when focus is hard, but you stay locked in. In those moments when giving less would go unnoticed, but you give more anyway. That's what builds a king, not the spotlight, the shadows. You have to learn to command yourself, to direct your attention, your energy, your habits, because these are the tools of real power. It's not about working harder for its own sake. It's about working intentionally with a sense of ownership over your direction. Because if you don't own it, someone else will. And when that happens, you stop creating and start complying. You stop leading and start following. and slowly your identity erodes under the weight of everyone else's expectations but your own. There's a kind of integrity that comes from self-leadership, a kind that can't be faked. When you know you can trust yourself to follow through, to hold the line, to execute regardless of circumstance, you become unshakable. You move with clarity. You speak with certainty. Not because life is easy or predictable, but because you are. You've built yourself into someone who can be relied on. And that's what people follow. Not noise, not hype, consistency. But here's where many people fall short. They wait for momentum to arrive before they act. They want to feel ready before they take the leap. And that mindset will keep you average forever. Because momentum isn't found, it's made. You create it by moving. By acting before you feel like it. By showing up when you don't want to. That's what unlocks growth. That's what builds trust with yourself. And the truth is, no one's going to do that work for you. You can have mentors, resources, systems, but none of it matters if you haven't decided to take full ownership of your life. Not partial ownership, not when it's easy, full. Because that's what leadership demands. You have to be willing to confront the hard truths about yourself. Where you've been coasting, where you've been avoiding, where you've let comfort win, and not from a place of shame, but from a place of power. Because until you get brutally honest about where you are, you'll never get to where you're meant to be. Self-leadership starts with self-awareness. Then comes responsibility. Then comes action. And as you step into that mindset, something powerful happens. You stop chasing validation. You stop needing permission. You stop asking if you're capable. And you start proving it. Not just to others, but to yourself. Every single day, with every small, deliberate choice you make, it's not glamorous, it's not dramatic, but it is transformative. Because the more you lead yourself, the more gravity you carry. People feel it. They sense it. Because leadership isn't about control, it's about consistency. It's about being someone who others trust to follow, not because you talk the loudest, but because you walk the clearest path. This world doesn't reward potential. It rewards execution. It rewards those who take ownership of their time, their habits, their mind. And the only way to do that is to lead from the inside out. No more waiting, no more wishing. Lead yourself completely, relentlessly every single day.